Who's the real Bitcoin maximalist? Max Keiser or Javier Milei? Max Keiser worked on Wall Street. He found Bitcoin when it was only $1. He's a self-described Bitcoin maximalist. He's been one of the biggest and most influential Bitcoin advocates. He's also been an advocate of sound money, the damage of inflation, and the central bank that causes it, and how this causes a cantillon effect, where those closest to the money printer get rich at the expense of the rest of us, which is clearly happening in the United States and throughout the world. Max Keiser deserves huge credit for not lending his name to any spurious, scammy, or fraudulent crypto projects like many Bitcoin OGs did to cash in on their fame. Max Keiser has been quite critical of President Javier Milei, who early in his administration implemented AML KYC, that is, anti-money laundering, know your customer rules for crypto exchanges in Argentina. Because of the irresponsible fiscal policies of the previous Argentine administration, Javier Milei was having to renegotiate loans with the International Monetary Fund at the time he made the decision to do the AML KYC. While I don't have any direct evidence, it seems likely that the IMF required the AML KYC for crypto exchanges as part of the renegotiation of the loans to Argentina. The IMF is known to be quite hostile to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. In fact, they required in the recent renegotiation with El Salvador that El Salvador drop its legal tender requirements for Bitcoin. While I agree with Max Keiser that these privacy invasions called AML KYC should not be allowed under the law, I don't think that Javier Milei had much of a choice. He was either to give in to those requirements or to default on the debt, which would have been devastating to Argentina. Max Keiser's pushed for making Bitcoin legal tender. He's also pushed in El Salvador for legislation that makes any other cryptocurrencies illegal, calling them shitcoins. Keiser also praised SEC Chairman Gary Ginsler, who brought a number of lawsuits against altcoins, saying that they were all unregistered securities and should be taken down. Keiser said Gary Ginsler was doing God's work. This is a position taken by many Bitcoin maxis, as Bitcoin was the only cryptocurrency not to have any pre-mines and not have any pre-sales. Depression-era regulations like Glass-Steagall seem to be a favorite of Max Keiser. The Cypherpunks were considered the inspiration for Bitcoin or the creators of Bitcoin. The goal of the Cypherpunks was to increase privacy and anonymity in communications and financial transactions, particularly with respect to the government. They created Bitcoin to be a private money and therefore eliminate the corrupt practices of legal tender laws and central banks like the Federal Reserve. They appear to have been influenced by libertarian writers and by the works of Ayn Rand, and Satoshi Nakamoto even wrote in an email about Friedrich Hayek. In summary, I think we can say that the creators of Bitcoin were trying to create the libertarian goal of separation of money and state. So what are Milei's views on Bitcoin and in general? Here he discusses Bitcoin in an interview with a reporter who asked him about Bitcoin in Argentina.
Let's see, what is the point? The point is the first thing to understand is that the central bank is a scam. Yes, this is a mechanism by which politicians scam people with the inflationary tax. Bitcoin represents a return of money to its original creator, which is the private sector. Money is an invention of the private sector to solve problems of what it has to do with the butter economy, which are double coincidence and indivisibility, and then paper money appears as a matter of portability. That is, because in reality you had different currencies. That is, you had the flaxseed, wheat. So that's where the salary comes from. It's also where the superstition of if the soap falls on the table and what currencies did individuals shows they chose the silver for the small transactions, the gold for the large transactions. And later, as it was a danger to transport it, they left it, deposited it, and took a proof that it was there. And then in 1445, during the first Congress of Genoa, the state appropriated the exclusive right to issue money through legal tender laws. This allows politicians to steal from you with the inflationary tax. Bitcoin has an algorithm, and one day it will reach a certain amount, no more, and it can compete with other currencies. In fact, it competes against Ethereum and others. The interesting thing is, Bitcoin returns money to the private sector. But what is the problem? The problem is that the state will not want to give its monopoly of legal tender that allows them to cheat you with the inflationary tax. Then the Bitcoin is the natural reaction to this scam, which is the central banks, and money becomes private again, and the opposite of what these politicians want and will not allow. What happens when you have economies with high inflation and the problem of the scam is clear? Then you can even discuss eliminating the central bank.
Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, is the first libertarian to be elected to be a president of any country in over 100 years. Currency competition was one of the policies that Javier Milei ran on. This meant eliminating legal tender laws. Thus, people can use US dollars, or they can use Bitcoin, or they can use Ethereum. They can use any currency that they want, including the Argentine peso. Why didn't Milei just declare Bitcoin legal tender like El Salvador did? Hayek's fatal conceit, which is the government thinking it knows better than the people what kind of currency they want and what kind of currency to use. Interestingly enough, one of the smartest people I know has seen the same problem occur in Minecraft, where people try to pick a legal tender, and also with price controls. And Javier Milei has described himself as an Austrian economist who's an anarcho-capitalist. He's eliminated legal tender laws, and he plans on eliminating the central bank. Interestingly, the U.S. Supreme Court found legal tender laws unconstitutional. Lincoln had passed legal tender laws to help finance the Civil War. Interestingly, the U.S. Supreme Court found legal tender laws unconstitutional. Lincoln had passed legal tender laws to help finance the Civil War. So who do you think is a real Bitcoin maxi? Max Keiser or Javier Milei?